Hello and welcome to the Broken Road podcast. I'm your host, Trent Peterson, and this is my beautiful bride, Amber Peterson, slash caregiver, slash best friend, slash River's mom. Thanks for joining us for episode 2. I gave you a pretty good overview of kind of how things had gone uh, in my mindset, and now we're going to get a little heads up from Amber to see, kind of what she experience through this and hopefully fill in some of the blanks. So, starting off, I think we can skip past the gym unless there's something you want to talk about at the gym. I did have to call you, so I guess that was kind of strange.
For sure. Yeah, that was strange. But we got you up and out of there.
Yeah, we did. What happened after that?
I stayed to finish my workout, and you were off to what I told you to go to was the office and maybe drink some electrolytes and take some Tylenol. Because we thought you were just having a cramp. But by the time I got back to the office, you were already on your first meeting.
Oh. So, being hard headed as usual.
You did not want to go to the ER.
It's pretty dumb because it was Friday. I thought it would ruin my weekend. And I mean, it was going to ruin it either way. Little did I know it was going to do more than ruin a weekend. That
It was a big
about to be the
weekend.
start of a journey that we
Yeah.
would have never expected.
River's birthday, 7th birthday, was the very next day, and we had company coming in, and yeah, it was a lot happening that weekend. So, but still, no reason to not go to the ER. Advocare said, I'm not even going to mess with you.
Yeah, they saw me walking around, holding my arm. They said that's not going to happen. So we ended up at the emergency room. Like I said, the attending doctor came out, checked my arm, right? And they couldn't get
No
a
pulse.
pulse down in my arm. And sent me back for a CT scan. And when he came back, he said that they were going to take me to the Texas Health downtown. And do you remember kind of how that time period happened?
I mean,
Because it kind of gets quick for me. I remember a bumpy, hot helicopter ride that normally I would have loved, but it was awful
excuse me.
and scary.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't much. Just thinking, do we have our care flight up to date? And was able to do that before we left the hospital in Stephenville. We had a friend, Corey, dear friend Corey, came up and made sure to take care of Trent's truck at the office for me and just get me off and going, and was going to take care of the office in general. But then I got in my truck, and one of those moments where you pack at the last minute. I just tried to think about what we might need just for a couple days, because I figured we'd be having some type of surgery. I didn't know what that was at the moment, but got in the truck, and on my 45-minute to an hour drive into Harris, called a couple friends to let them know what was happening, and some of them met me up there, which was nice.
So I remember landing on the top of Texas Harris. I remember them coming out and saying that the air conditioner wasn't working there either. And I remember it being really hot, which, you said I was kind of flush already and hot. But it seemed excruciatingly hot. I remember being sweaty. Seemed like it was serious. People were flocking around me. And I know they gave me some pain medicine at that point. And I think these are some of the details like that it's kind of where I lose time and don't really remember what happened. So I know that they were scheduling a emergency thrombectomy on my arm, had a thrombus in my heart, but they didn't. Nothing that I remember them talking a whole lot about right then.
No, I think your arm was like first and foremost important at that moment. But I honestly thought that you would be in surgery by the time I got there, and they actually waited till the following morning at 6 a.m. to do your surgery.
Well, I mean, looking back and after doing some research, that actual vascular surgeon's pretty hard to come across. I think I could be wrong. Somebody's probably can leave it in the comments and let us know, but I think there's only 3 vascular surgeons in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. There may be more, but I remember hearing that at one point. So that must have been why we had to wait.
Possibly.
So, like I said, I really don't. This is really, I have to fill in the blanks. So where did they have us? I remember they brought me in the emergency room, gave me pain medication, and then moved me to a room. But I really don't remember much of that time right there.
Yeah, I think we were on the cardio floor or in the cardio wing, and that's where we met for the first time, like the lead doctor on that floor. And she was a big advocate for us the whole time we were in the hospital for those first 3 weeks.
You remember her name?
I don't. I mean, we saw, I think when I look back at our paperwork, I think there was like 15 different doctors that saw
We
you.
need to kind of research that and get those names. I know we did see a lot of doctors. There were some nurses that were really important during that time, and therapists. And I'd really like to kind of reach out to them,
Or at
catch
least give
them up
them,
on the progress.
at least give them props too, that in a very scary moment in life, they're your lifeline. They're everything. And it's weird how time kind of stands still. You don't realize how much time you're in there, when you're in a critical moment like that. It's like Groundhog Day. It really is.
So we're in the cardio unit. We are scheduled to have surgery, and we go in. I go in for surgery the next morning at 6 a.m., you said?
Yeah, and your mom and dad met us up there. My mom stayed behind to watch River, and we had a couple of other friends that showed up. Roxy and CeeLo and Ethan all showed up, and Brian was there as well.
Okay. Yeah, because I just really don't remember. And I don't think you were really letting many people in even to see me then, right?
Nobody could come in and see you by that point. We were just kind of waiting. We had already gotten you off to surgery,
Oh,
and we
okay,
were
okay.
waiting for you, yeah, to get out, which I kind of felt like it took a little bit longer than I thought it was going to. So when when they sat us down to kind of go over what the surgery looked like, it was a lot. Do you want me to go over kind of what that was like?
Yeah, and I don't
Yeah.
remember that part really.
I want to say Chris and Misty and the boys were there at this time, and just sitting around in the vascular surgeon, just kind of talked about how what the blood clots looked like. That they had looked like they'd been there for a long time. They were kind of sinewy and scar tissue like. They were white and not red. So he said they had been in there for a while, and I said that we'd been chasing a pain in you around your neck, shoulder, arm for about a year. We'd always gotten diagnoses, but nothing that really stopped any pain or had a finality to anything. But he said he had a couple different surgeons try their hand at the balloons to try to get it out, and there was some left in there that he just didn't want to cause any more damage than he had to. Said that he still didn't get a good blood flow to your top artery in that left hand, and got a very slight one in the bottom one of your left hand as well. But I kind of really lost it towards the end of the conversation when he was talking about how we need to watch your hand, that you could lose it. And I just kind of threw my hands up in my face and just started crying, just saying how you would be devastated. And there was a couple of other ladies in the room that cried with me, and we all know how much you love to play guitar, and so yeah, it was difficult for everybody in the room to hear that.
On top of just life in general, and
Well, yeah,
going
what would
without
that be
that,
like?
considering I fell asleep thinking I was just going to be in a quick surgery, so that would have been a little hard to swallow. I was very blessed that
And I never
happened that
told you
way.
that.
Yeah.
I never told you that. I when I went in as you were coming out of recovery, I just kind of went over, some of the hardships they had during your surgery, and
I did feel like you were holding something
you
back.
did. And you asked me. I mean, we've known each other for 20 something years. So yeah, you asked me and I just said that we just need to watch your hand, and that was all I left it at. And your dad spilled the beans months and months later that we actually were worried, and so was the doctor, about you losing your hand.
Yeah, because I think in the first podcast I talked about, it seemed like when I came out of surgery, I was surrounded by some people, and maybe it was just you right there at that moment, but it seemed like there was a couple people in the room that I remember. At some point, I remember
Afterwards,
that.
yeah, your
And
mom
it just
and
seemed
dad
really
and
heavy and like this cloud kind of hanging over, and I wasn't sure why or what had happened. And I think that probably clued me in a little bit more than anything that, something serious was going on. But I was still pretty heavily sedated then, too.
yeah. Yeah, I think they had you on morphine and they had switched you over to Dilaudid because the morphine wasn't really helping. That you still felt like you had a vice on your arm or like a tourniquet that, you needed to have come off. So I was a little frustrated that we didn't have an emergency surgery the day before because I felt like the longer that you didn't have perfusion of blood in your hand and arm, that could have been partly why, that if you would have lost it, I would have been pretty upset.
And I still fall back to that, after looking further and researching that that particular field is just really limited. And
Yeah.
doctors that go to the extent, I guess, that it takes to be that surgeon. It's a pretty specialized field and it's very small. So, you know, I'm sure if there was a way with the treatments that they did give us and the way that they were with all the treatments that we did get, I think if there was a way to speed that up, they would have. Yeah, I felt like we got that I remember, and then aftercare, great care there at Texas Health. I got
Yeah, I do too.
really nothing
Especially,
negative. I remember someone yelling. Was this the person that was yelling, "Let me out of here"? Is that kind of in that same time frame?
I feel like this was like that evening.
Okay.
Um, yes, there was another patient in the room next to us that was kind of unruly, and she was like, yelling, "Get me out of here!" And funny part of that is that one of the nurses at the nurses station said, "Was that a nurse?" And I mean, it's a critical, it's a critical floor to be on. So
Yeah, and I think
it's a lot going
dealing
on.
with trauma, especially for people that do that on a daily basis, being a volunteer firefighter myself, and just in general being someone that always tries to pull over and help people when there's an accident, there's a different side to you when you deal with trauma. So I was able to even laugh at that while I was going through what I was going through. It was comedic relief that I needed at that moment, and I felt like, okay, well, that's something to laugh about when it really felt. I don't know, but I don't remember exactly how I felt. But I know being in the hospital is not my thing in
Oh,
any
you're
way.
never been a good patient
No.
ever. I just kind of dread it when you get sick.
Yeah, I mean, the man flu is real,
It's so real in our
and like
house.
when I get it really bad. So,
Worse than any man ever did,
yeah,
ever.
worse than anybody in the whole world. I'm
Ever.
pretty sure. It's like
Yes.
debilitating. But anyways, I digress, as Dexter would say. So we're waiting for an answer, or just waiting to get blood flow back to this hand. I remember on doing a Doppler on it, checking it multiple times, and having to do it a couple of different ways. Didn't that one doctor come in? It seems like and did some kind of like he was a specialist that did a almost like an IV or a catheter up into my arm to check
That
for
was
the.
way after.
Oh, that was way after. Okay, so they checked on that with a Doppler for a long time and weren't getting blood flow back in that. That was kind of a serious situation, anyways.
Yeah.
And I was on uh, anticoagulants as well.
And heparin, like a
With,
high dose of
yeah,
heparin.
TPA. Okay, so um, I guess let's fast forward. Surgery didn't go as planned. We're sitting there, and then that evening I eat dinner.
Yeah, so right out of surgery was probably somewhere around like 9 o'clock. And so I went down the cafeteria, got you something to eat, got me something to eat, kind of settled in um, that we were going to be there for at least a couple days. And then we ate lunch. I kind of remember a hamburger. I think you wanted a hamburger. And so we ate lunch and then ate dinner that evening. And about 11 o'clock, it seems like there was a nurse change over, and you got your evening medicine. And kind of pretty quick after, like within 10, 15 minutes, you said, I kind of feel like I'm going to get sick. And so you kind of sat up on the side of the bed, and we pulled the trash can over, and you kind of heaved a couple times, and then you just started saying like the back of your neck started feeling like kind of really
I remember that.
like heavy, and we wanted me to work on you, so I had you put your forehead onto my chest, and I was working on you kind of. It
So
wasn't.
just because a lot of people aren't going to know you that watch this
Oh, so
podcast, that when you
I've
say work on me,
yes, so I've been a professional massage therapist and massage therapy instructor for like I think I'm going on like 27 years now.
well,
Yeah. So
time
I
flies.
knew enough. I knew enough to know that I couldn't really. It wasn't safe for me to do much, but I just wanted to comfort you. So I was kind of working on your neck a little bit, and you were feeling kind of hot and sweaty. You kind of said, "God, my right foot is going numb, and I can't feel it." And then, like a couple seconds later, you were like, you kind of laid back in the bed, and you were like, I can't swallow anymore. And I'd already kind of made eye contact with the nurse. He had seen us sitting up on the side of the bed, and he'd kind of come by and I just said, "You're a little nauseous." But when you said that and you leaned back and said that you couldn't swallow anymore, I kind of looked at him and was like, there's something wrong. I need you to come and check on him. And within like, gosh, 5 minutes, we probably had 15 people in the room, and they
I
were
remember that.
trying to get you off to the CT scan again.
That was scary, really fast.
Yeah.
I remember getting wheeled down hastily to the CT area. They pulled me off of the bed that I was on and put me on the gurney. And when that happened, I remember my left arm that had just had surgery on it. I was trying to guard and protect it, and a nurse basically shoved my arm over, and I said, "Hey, I just had surgery on that." I remember that part, and she just smashed it. I mean, that of all the things that happened to me, that was the probably the worst thing, and just pushed me and smushed me in there. Now, mind you, they were trying to save my life, and time was of the essence. But at at that immediate time, I was pretty upset
You're
about
very
that.
upset.
I
Yeah.
do remember that, but I don't remember much after that. After that, it's a blur.
So while you were gone, I called my best friend Auburn and just told her, I'm alone. I need somebody, just here with me. My second phone call was to our physician, Brett, and he just was trying to calm me down. I was like, "Tell me what's happening, what's going on. This is what's happened right before he left." And he just said, I need you to calm down, that we don't know what we don't know, and I won't know anything until they get back and, you have some measures from that CT scan. And then when I got off the phone with him, the nurse asked me if I wanted a chaplain, and that was rough. That was rough. Good, but I told her yes, just have somebody come pray with me, please.
Wow. So it was pretty serious right then.
Pretty serious, yeah. And I would say within about 20 minutes, Auburn was there. The chaplain stayed in the room with me because he recognized that we were alone. It was just you and I, and that it was fairly late. Brian came up. I don't remember if CeeLo came
Now
up
this is
that
after
night.
the stroke had already
Yeah, this
happened.
is like, yeah, you were
Okay.
coming out of CT that evening. Like I just was alone and scared. But you were still talking to me. They were asking you all the questions. What's your name? Where are you at? What year is it? Who's the president? Like all the things. And you were able to answer. So I had some relief there. But I knew that they also had gotten you like this little suction machine, which was a lifeline for a month and a half.
Yeah. Yeah, that was. It was also really irritating and
Oh,
the
like all the things. You've never,
noise, but
yeah, he's never been in the hospital. You've never had a surgery procedure like that. Um, so it was scary, but they couldn't get him into. I think it was like the MRI machine. Is they wanted you to get into an MRI to see what the damage was. They knew you'd had a stroke, but they didn't know exactly what type of stroke that you had or what was damaged. But they couldn't get you in there because you couldn't lay on your back flat and have this suction thing because you have to be immobile. So they were trying to find a mobile version of that, and yeah.
to keep the saliva and everything from choking me, basically, because I
Mm-hmm.
couldn't swallow on my own.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we get the MRI. We're back, and they're trying to decide what's happened and trying to figure it out at this point.
Mm-hmm.
They're already administering TPAs, the heparin or whatever,
Yes.
to try to get stuff to break apart, or clean up, and make sure there's no more damage. We're not going to have another stroke right after the first stroke. They don't even know what has caused the stroke.
Yeah, I
Still
think
don't
at
know.
this no,
Yeah.
and but once we were able to get that mobile device, um, we were able to get you in the MRI machine, and they said that you had an ischemic um, brainstem or an ischemic brainstem rain shower effect. So it wasn't like a full occlusion in anything. It was just big enough particles of coming off of the blood clot, probably in your heart, because we were starting to address that because it was just this floating thrombus that was in his aortic arch. It was
Which is still there.
significant. It's still there, but it's like a quarter of what it was. But yeah, so then they were able to see what you had, and you kind of presented a little differently because therapists were coming in now, and kind of like, wow, you're kind of an enigma because you're ambidextrous. So the way that your brain works, it already uses both sides. And so when you had the stroke, you had full numbness, but all strength on your right side, but you couldn't feel any kind of hot, cold pinpricks or something smooth. And then on your left side, you had lost muscle, just being able to move your muscles on that side, and but you had all of your feeling, which was something that was a little strange.
Yeah, and I remember being able to hear people in the room, but yeah, I definitely lost my vision, or there was vision, but it looked like a scrolling TV. Is the best way,
To
old
the
tubey
side, it
TV.
was like a diagonal
Yeah, and
scroll.
and I talked about that in the last episode, but
But you
I
didn't
didn't
tell
tell
anybody
anybody.
that. Yeah, and so
No,
we didn't
I really wanted to wake up and
see if it would go away.
I just hoped all of it would go away.
Yeah, I think I remember multiple times being through that 3 weeks that we were in the ICU, that you would just kind of wake up and cry that it was all not a dream.
Yeah,
It was rough.
yeah, it was hard.
And we didn't have River up right away. River's our only son, and we just didn't know. We didn't want to scare him, but we also wanted him with us, and didn't really have all the answers. And how much do you share? And we finally had him up. I want to say it was like 2 days later.
There was a
Your mom and dad brought
nurse
him up.
that talked to us about it. It seems like it was a mother as well. She was asking us about him, and we told her our concerns, and she basically was the one that kind of said, "Hey, he's got to find out, and it would be better for him to see the whole process." Something like that. It seems like that I remember.
Yeah,
Than just coming in later or not getting to see me at all
especially if something
if
else
something
happened.
else happened. Yeah.
Yeah, which we were like, oh my gosh, something else could happen.
Yeah.
And so we immediately like asked mom and dad to bring him up and be with us. And by this time, we had missed his birthday. that we had all these plans for.
Which upset me a bunch too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Memorial Day weekend. I mean, it's just it was always been a busy weekend for us. So
Yeah. All right, so that kind of gets us caught up to now. I've had the stroke. Um,
they wanted to
we
get you over to their neurology wing. So they moved us over to the neurology wing, and then we did have River's birthday, and that was good. And your sister and Wesley, our brother-in-law, came up, and with the boys, William and Wyatt, and my mom came up, and we all just had a little birthday party.
and my mom and dad.
Yeah. But quickly after they got us in that room, I think we were in there for just a couple hours, and then they were transferring us up to intensive ICU in case you needed to be intubated at any time.
Yeah, so that was kind of like another eye opener. Okay, we got over the hurdle of having the stroke. We think, okay, now this is what we're gonna kind of got to figure out. Which at this point, y'all don't realize that I can't see really or anything.
Still haven't shared.
But then they say, well, we need to get you to ICU. That way we can watch you closer. And those people are trained professionally in case you have to be intubated, uh, you know, at any point.
Yeah,
So
that
then
any
was
nurse could do that. Yeah, and they wouldn't have to wait for somebody to come to you to do it.
Which you were having to deal with this stuff a lot more than I was at that point. I mean, I remember it. I was in and out. Almost felt like I kept, like I said, you know, I kept hoping it was a dream. It felt like a dream, but I would fall asleep and then wake up and it was not a dream.
Not a dream. No. And you know, just like any kind of therapy they do these days, right after you have something, they're in pretty quick. So we were also kind of concerned at the damage that was done by getting you into the CT machine.
Right.
At that point, you know, 3-4 days later, your forearm was 12 inches around and your bicep was 16 inches and growing. And that's the guy that came in. We had I think a plastic surgeon had come in
and
to
he's the one that
try
did
to try to see if you were like bleeding internally, if it was something that we needed to go back in for another surgery, like what was happening.
He's the one that did the catheter or Doppler type thing.
Yeah, he did some type of something like that.
I
But
forget what
that guy was
procedure
actually
was.
a little bit later.
Oh, okay.
Because so he had so on the left arm they had put an armband on him saying no stick, don't poke that arm, like you don't get blood out of it, don't administer any drugs into that arm. So everything was happening on the right side, as far as any kind of medicine administration.
And we'll post pictures on the social media, probably on the website as well, of some of these things we're talking about, so you can see kind of the damage to my arm and the therapy, which I think is what we're kind of leading into now.
So they get you up and going pretty quick, but we realized, because you had kind of been laying in bed for at least 2 days, excuse me, that when you'd sit up, you would list to the left, and like you just kind of had no, what they call it something I can't remember, but he just had no stability on his left side, and so they had to kind of teach him to brace his core and to get him up on the walker.
So we probably started a little late today on this, but we're getting close to a point I think it'd be a good spot to stop, and then we can pick it back up on the next session. I mean, we still got another, probably 5 minutes we can visit, but just giving you a heads up. That way we can kind of, maybe we section out the therapy part of my journey, into another session. Was there anything else that kind of stuck out to you during that time before even the beginning of therapy? I mean, we can kind of discuss that, but anything else along to this point of the journey that we haven't discussed, or feelings that you had? Anything?
We had a huge job that we had been blessed with, that we had just finished dirt work on, or we were right in the middle of dirt work.
That's the last picture on my phone.
And is the dirt work. And we had just done our our walkthrough of our punch list on the house that we had just finished for an amazing couple the day before. So it was stressful, but God made it rain for like 2.5 weeks while we were in there. And so I was able to kind of lean back and take a deep breath that we wouldn't have been doing anything anyway.
Which
So
was
that was
normally,
a blessing.
yeah, and normally I would have
Been stressed
been
out.
stressed out over that,
Yeah.
delaying the job and holding it back. But that was a blessing in disguise.
And we had a lot of friends that stepped up immediately, that business relationships and close friends that were making moves to help us in any way they could,
I can't
and
even
help me through
describe.
this job.
Yeah, that was a crazy thing to experience too. Was a outpour of love from all of our friends to help us.
Yeah, we had lots of contractors and friends that came up to see us while we were there, and people calling me, whatever you need. Corey's house had flooded. I mean, it was a bad rain. But again, I was able to relax to know that there's nothing I would have been doing other than where I was right then.
Yeah, and at that point, you had been right by my side through that whole part of the journey, which would end up being
A month and a half. So I think,
from that point.
yeah. So
Yeah.
from the time we went in on the 24th, we got of May, we left your inpatient recovery on July 4th.
Right.
And I think I only went home 3 times.
Yeah, so, and we still got a couple more minutes. We did do a little bit of therapy. Started at Texas Health. Do you remember the speech therapist there? Is it Katie or not Katie?
No, I can't remember her name
Well, anyway,
right now. I
right
wrote
now,
everybody's name down.
that was such a blur, and that there was far from being any settling in at that point, I think. So, I mean, yes, you did write down. We do have notes, and there's some of those people we're still going to reach out to, hopefully have on the podcast, because they were the beginning of what would be a long journey in therapy and still continues. But we did have somebody come by right about around that time to say, "Hey, you're not gonna stay in this hospital. I'm from Baylor, and they happen to know somebody from our church, sort of, kind of in a roundabout way." Right?
Yeah, it was like she was dating a gentleman that's family went to our church, and they had, heard about us. They had kind of started like a fundraiser for us. And she had heard about this young guy that had gone in with a blood clot and then had a heart situation and then had a stroke on top of it. And she was from Baylor Southwest inpatient therapy. And when we started looking at where we were going to go,
Not Baylor Southwest, Baylor Scott and White. Sorry.
oh, I'm sorry, yes,
Yeah.
Baylor, Scott and White. Anyway, that she had heard about us, and when we started reaching out, that they were actually going to be our first try to get into, and
Because
they came highly recommended, yeah.
And I would do the same for anybody else. I mean, that was top notch care, great facility, awesome nurses, awesome therapists, awesome staff, everything. That was a godsend. There's just no way that could have happened any better for us in that situation.
Yeah.
So it was pretty wild that there was a connection between her and small town USA out here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, anyways, yeah. So I think this is a good spot for us to stop. We'll break this into 2 parts and catch back up on the beginning of the therapy and inpatient with Baylor Scott and White. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for joining me, Amber, and thank you for being my best friend and caretaker through all this.
You're very welcome.
Looking forward to talking to you again on the therapy journey, and we'll try to get a couple more I think interviews probably on what has happened to me, and then start branching out, hopefully, getting to some other trauma survivors, and hopefully getting some more uplifting stories.
Definitely.
All right, everybody. We'll catch you on the next one. Thanks, and God bless.